Right now, 70% of the people listening to this are terrified of the future.
Yeah, that is a staggering thought.
It really is. The American Psychiatric Association just released their 2024 annual mental health poll, and, well, the numbers are absolutely staggering.
I mean, we see it everywhere, right?
Right. Almost half of all adults report feeling significantly more anxious than they did just 12 months ago. And a massive 70% are explicitly panicked about what happens next.
Which shows we are a culture of panic, really.
Yes, we are a society quite literally suffocating under the tyrant of what-ifs.
Oh, the what ifs. They just eat away at you.
They do. We buy the best planners, we optimize our morning routines, we download financial forecasting apps, and we try to build this, impenetrable fortress of control around our lives.
Which never actually works.
Never works.
Yeah.
But what if the cure for your anxiety is not a better schedule or a more optimized life?
Well, what else is there?
What if the actual cure is a complete total surrender to a God who intentionally makes your life crooked?
Wow. Giving up the illusion of control to find actual joy, I mean, that feels completely backward to the modern mind.
It does. Welcome to Reformed Thinking. I'm so glad you're joining us today.
It is great to be here for this.
We have a mission today that feels incredibly urgent for the cultural moment we are currently occupying.
Definitely.
We are fixing our attention on the ancient wisdom of Ecclesiastes, specifically chapter 7, verses 13 through 15.
Those are some heavy verses.
Very heavy. The goal for this deep dive is to examine the theology of our good days and our bad days.
Right. Unpacking how God's absolute providence govern our fleeting, unpredictable lives.
Precisely. We are looking straight into King Solomon's teachings regarding prosperity, adversity, and, well, a human obsession with trying to steer the universe.
Which is an obsession we all share, to be honest.
Aye.
To understand the weight of what Solomon, who is also referred to as Koheleth, or the preacher, is saying, I think we have to pull you out of the hyper-connected, fast-paced, modern era.
Right, we have to go way back.
Yeah, drop you right into the dirt and the gold of the ancient world. We need to look at the 10th century BC.
So set the stage for us. What was that world like?
Well, we have to understand the soil from which this wisdom grew. Solomon reigned during the absolute zenith of Israel's golden age.
We are talking about a period of unmatched geopolitical dominance, right?
Right, and unparalleled stability. He had peace on all sides.
Right, he is not writing from a place of deprivation.
Not at all.
We tend to associate heavy philosophical reflection with people who have suffered immense loss.
Yeah.
Like someone sitting in the ashes of a ruined life.
Sure, like Job.
Yes, like Job. But Solomon had everything. I mean, 1 Kings describes his daily provision. It is wild. 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of meal, 10 fat oxen, 20 pasture-fed cattle, 100 sheep.
And that is just a Tuesday.
Right. Besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fattened fowl. Every single day.
It is an absurd amount of wealth. He had an ivory throne overlaid with pure gold.
Oh.
Yeah, silver was as common as stones in Jerusalem. He had international fleets bringing back exotic goods from across the known world.
So he had absolute power, staggering wealth, intellectual supremacy, and basically every earthly pleasure available.
He built the temple, he built massive public works, but, and this is the turning point, the literary context of Ecclesiastes is defined by a specific Hebrew word.
Which is Hebel, right?
Yes, Hebel. In English translations, you will often see it rendered as vanity or meaninglessness.
Which feels a bit abstract.
It does. But the literal physical translation is vapor or breath. Solomon uses this word 38 times in the book.
38 times, that is a lot.
It is the defining theme. He looks at his palaces, his military alliances, his gold reserves, his agricultural triumphs, and he calls it a vapor.
I love the visual of a vapor. If you walk outside on a freezing January morning and exhale, you see this thick white cloud.
Right, your breath just hangs there.
It looks solid. It looks like you can reach out and grab it. But the second you close your fist around it, well, there's nothing there. Yeah.
Your hand just closes on empty air.
Yeah. Solomon describes this phenomenon as life under the sun.
Which is a phrase he uses to mean life lived strictly from an earthly, horizontal perspective.
Locked entirely within the bounds of human time and space.
Exactly. It feels incredibly counterintuitive. You would assume the man who solved the geopolitical puzzle of the Middle East, the man with all the gold and all the peace, would write a book saying, I figured out the formula.
Right, like just implement my fiscal policies and follow my daily habits.
Yeah, buy my course on leadership. But instead, he says it is all ungraspable.
which puts Ecclesiastes in a very distinct category when you compare it to the rest of the wisdom literature in Scripture.
It really does.
Let's talk about that contrast for a minute, because when you read Proverbs, which Solomon also wrote, it feels very different.
It does feel different. Proverbs gives you the general maxims.
Right. It feels like it gives you the straightforward formula. Work hard, and you will have food. Honor the Lord, and your barns will be filled.
That is a crucial distinction to make. Proverbs provides the general rules for a normative covenant life. It tells you how the world generally operates under God's moral design.
Basically, the laws of gravity for wisdom.
Precisely. Then you have the book of Job, which addresses the extreme, baffling reality of innocent suffering.
When the proverb seems to break.
Yeah, when the formula just shatters. Ecclesiastes sits in a unique space between them. Solomon is addressing a covenant, people who are looking at the Deuteronomic covenant and entirely misapplying it.
So in Deuteronomy, God outlines blessings for national obedience and curses for national disobedience.
Right, at a national level.
If the nation of Israel followed the law, God would bless the rains and the harvests. If they rebelled, he would send famine and exile.
Yes. But the people started applying that national overarching covenant to guarantee their own individual earthly success on a micro level.
They personalized it.
They turned it into a rigid mathematical equation for personal prosperity. They were acting just like Job's misguided comforters.
Who assumed Job must have some hidden, scandalous sin because his life fell apart.
Right. Their logic was simple: good people get good things, bad people get bad things.
Which is such a dangerous oversimplification. Let's use an analogy to break down how human beings process this. Are we basically wired to treat God like a cosmic vending machine?
Oh, that was a great analogy.
Think about the mechanics of a vending machine.
Yeah.
You walk up, you insert your payment, you press the button, and the machine is contractually obligated to drop the snack.
You expect the transaction to clear.
We do the exact same thing with God.
What?
We put in our good behavior tokens.
Like, what are the tokens?
Maybe we went to church 3 weeks in a row, we read a devotional, we did not lose our temper in traffic, and we volunteered.
So we drop the tokens in.
We put the tokens in, and we press the button for the easy life snack. We feel entirely entitled to receive a healthy child, a thriving business, or a smooth Tuesday.
That captures the human condition perfectly. We really do think like that. And what happens when the vending machine fails to drop the item?
Well, we get furious. We kick the machine, we shake it, we assume it is broken, or, we assume there is no one managing the machine at all.
We panic because the transaction failed.
Right. If I put the coins in and the snack does not fall, it means the rules of the universe are broken, and I am not in control. So I have to ask, is our modern anxiety actually just a frustrated, terrified reaction when the cosmic vending machine does not do what we commanded it to do?
That is precisely the root of the anxiety. We are terrified because a broken transaction implies we are vulnerable.
We hate being vulnerable.
We despise it. And the ancient Israelites were tempted by this exact same transactional mindset. The ancient Near Eastern pagan cultures treated their gods as capricious forces that had to be managed.
Managed how?
Well, if you wanted a good harvest, you had to manipulate the rain god with the right magic, the right incantation, or the right sacrifice.
So it was just leverage.
Exactly. It was an attempt to domesticate the divine. The Israelites wanted to domesticate Yahweh the same way.
Make him predictable.
Yes. And honestly, this ancient mindset is identical to modern iterations of the prosperity gospel.
Oh, for sure.
It tells you that if you just have enough faith, or sow a specific financial seed, God is obligated to make you wealthy and healthy.
It is the oldest lie wrapped in modern packaging. But Solomon directly attacks this vending machine mentality right out of the gate.
He does not pull any punches.
He forces the reader to stop looking at the buttons on the machine and look at the unalterable sovereign decrees of the Creator. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 13, he writes this massive paradigm-shifting sentence.
What does he say?
He says, "Consider the work of God, who can make straight what he has made crooked."
Who can make straight what he has made crooked. It is an arresting visual.
It stops you in your tracks.
It really does. The original Hebrew command for consider is raya. This does not mean to cast a passive, fleeting glance at something while you are walking by.
Right. Raya is an active, investigative gaze. It means to see, to look at, to actively inspect with intent.
It is an active inspection. Solomon is commanding you to thoroughly examine God's operational theater.
So do not just look at your difficult circumstances and complain about the pain.
No, look through the circumstances to the God who actively ordained them.
Okay, so what are we actively inspecting here?
We are commanded to inspect the things God has made crooked or bent. The Hebrew word here is iwa.
Let's dig into that word a bit.
Sure, in Hebrew grammar, this is a peel perfect verb. For those unfamiliar with the language, the peel stem indicates an intensive, intentional action.
It is not an accident.
No, it implies a deliberate exertion of force.
Let's put that into a relatable English equivalent to make sure the weight of this lands. It is the difference between, say, lightly bumping into someone in a crowded hallway versus squaring up your shoulders and intentionally shoving them.
Oh, that is a great way to visualize it. The peel stem means this is not a passive allowance. God is taking a steel rod over his knee and actively bending it.
Wow. The bent or crooked circumstances of your life, the sudden job loss, the chronic illness, the betrayal by a close friend, they are not accidents.
They are not the result of a chaotic universe spinning out of control while God looks the other way.
They are the intensive, intentional design of the Creator. God actively bent the circumstance.
I know that is a remarkably tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
It is. We prefer to think the bad things are just random luck or a statistical anomaly, or, maybe the devil slipped one past the goalie.
We really want to let God off the hook.
We do. We want to insulate God from the messy, painful realities of our lives to protect his reputation. But you are saying the text assigns the bending directly to God's hand.
The biblical text leaves no room for a dualistic worldview where God and some other dark force are locked in a cosmic arm wrestling match.
Battling for control over your Tuesday afternoon, with the outcome uncertain.
Exactly. The historic Reformed understanding of providence is immensely helpful here. If you look at the Westminster Shorter Catechism, question 11 asks what God's works of providence are.
And the answer?
The answer is that his works in providence are his most holy, wise, and highly capable preserving and governing of all his creatures and all their actions.
He is governing the bent things.
Yes, nothing falls outside of his sovereign decree.
That brings me back to the striking reality of the APA anxiety statistics we discussed earlier and the tyrant of what-ifs.
The what-ifs are exhausting.
Author Vinitha Risner talks about this grueling tyrant. She talks about lying awake at night wondering, what if my health fails completely? What if my children rebel and walk away from the faith? What if the economy crashes and we lose the house?
We have all had those sleepless nights.
If we truly believe God is actively governing those terrifying possibilities, it exposes something very dark about our anxiety. Anxiety is not just a biological stress response.
No, at a spiritual level, anxiety is a form of idolatry.
That is a severe diagnosis.
It is severe, but a biblically accurate one. Anxiety is a violation of the first commandment. You shall have no other gods before me.
How so? Walk us through that connection.
When we murmur against our circumstances and paralyze ourselves with dread concerning tomorrow, we are inherently declaring that God is not the supreme good and that he is not trustworthy.
We're saying we could do a better job.
Right. We are assuming that if we had the pen, we would write a better, safer, more fulfilling story than the Ancient of Days. Anxiety substitutes the sovereign creator with the idol of a trouble-free, predictable life.
I'm tracking with you, but I have to push back here. I genuinely struggle with this concept.
Go ahead, it is a hard concept.
If God is intentionally bending our circumstances, if he is the one actively making the road rocky and painful, doesn't that make him the author of our misery?
That is the immediate logical objection.
How is this any different from fatalism? How is this different from the ancient pagans who believed the gods were just playing cruel games with human lives for their own entertainment?
Right.
How do we hold on to God's goodness when he is the one holding the hammer that shatters our plans?
This is the exact tension Solomon is forcing us to inhabit, and it is a vital question. To avoid slipping into cold, mechanical fatalism, we have to look intently at the character of the God doing the bending.
Okay, so it comes back to his character.
Yes, he does not bend things out of malice, boredom, or caprice. He bends them according to his holy, wise, and fatherly counsel.
So the motivation is totally different.
Completely different. Fatalism says, things are terrible, you are trapped in the gears of the universe, and no one cares. Biblical providence says things are incredibly difficult, the pain is real, but a loving father who knows the end from the beginning is holding the reins.
That changes the perspective entirely.
The answer lies in how God claims absolute authorship over both the light and the dark, which brings us to the symmetry of verse 14.
Let's look at verse 14, because the text refuses to let us sit in the dark forever. Verse 14 says, "In the day of prosperity be joyful, and in the day of adversity consider. God has made the one as well as the other."
God claims full ownership of both realities.
I am reminded of Isaiah 45, verse 7, where God makes this staggering, absolute claim about his sovereignty. He says, "I form light and create darkness. I make well-being and create calamity. I am the Lord who does all these things."
The Lord claims all of it. He does not outsource the bad days to a subordinate department so he can keep his hands clean.
He claims the calamity.
He makes the day of prosperity and he makes the day of adversity. They stand side by side as paired teachers in the school of providence.
Let's examine the first command in verse 14. "In the day of prosperity, be joyful." The literal Hebrew phrasing is "be in the good" or "be enough."
Be in the good. I like that.
I want to linger here, because a lot of Christians, particularly those who take theology very seriously, struggle deeply with this command.
They feel guilty.
Yes. Some people feel an immense amount of guilt for enjoying a good meal, going on a quiet vacation, or experiencing a financial blessing.
They think they shouldn't be happy.
Exactly. They feel a low-grade hum of guilt because the world has fallen, people are suffering, and therefore they feel they should maintain a posture of perpetual misery to prove they are spiritual.
That is a false piety. It is an ascetic suspicion that actually despises the goodness of creation. The text explicitly commands us to enjoy the good days.
But how do we do that without making an idol out of the comfort?
The key to this enjoyment is doing it coram Deo.
Which is a Latin phrase meaning before the face of God.
Right. You receive the good day as a deliberate gift from the Father's hand. You do not worship the gift. You do not hoard it as if it is the ultimate source of your security. And you do not let the financial blessing make you arrogant or self-sufficient.
So you receive it with open hands.
You receive it with open hands, and you immediately offer thanksgiving back up to the giver. Enjoyment without idolatry is a high spiritual discipline.
So when the bonus hits the bank account, or the medical scan comes back clear, or you just have a beautiful Saturday afternoon with your kids at the park, you don't need to apologize for it.
No, enjoy it.
You enjoy it fiercely, knowing it is a vapor provided by God. But then we hit the second half of the verse. In the day of adversity, consider. The Hebrew word for consider here is ra.
It is a brilliant linguistic choice by Solomon. It is a wordplay between seeing and calamity or evil.
So what is the command for the day of adversity?
The command is not to panic. It is not to immediately blame your boss, your spouse, or the political system.
Or to just tune out.
Right. It is not to medicate the pain away with alcohol or endless hours of scrolling on your phone. The command is to contemplate. You are commanded to look directly at the adversity and recognize that God has made this dark day as well.
And the text gives us the specific reason why God alternates these days, why he gives us a season of sunshine and then plunges us into a severe storm.
There is a purpose to the rhythm.
Yes. Verse 14 concludes with this purpose clause, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him. God intentionally alternates our days to hide the future from us.
If we step back and look at the psychological reality of this hiddenness is actually a staggering act of divine mercy.
A mercy. How is hiding the future a mercy?
Because the Lord does not owe us a preview of our lives. Think about it. If we knew every coming sorrow, if you were handed a dossier today containing every single tragedy, betrayal, and illness you would face over the next 40 years, you would be entirely crushed before the hour even arrived.
That is terrifying.
You could not bear the psychological weight of knowing the exact date of your hardest trials.
And on the flip side, if we knew every coming success, if we knew we were guaranteed a massive financial windfall at age 50 or a perfect bill of health until age 90, we would become hopelessly arrogant.
We wouldn't need God.
Right. We would not depend on God for a single second. We would just coast through life, treating God as irrelevant.
Spot on. God mercifully gives us daily bread, not daily omniscience.
Daily bread, not daily omniscience. I like that.
He hides the future to humble our predictions, break our self-reliance, and force us to walk by faith, relying on his character rather than our own foresight.
I'm going to challenge our listeners right now because we live in an era that is absolutely obsessed with predicting the future.
We really are.
We are addicted to forecasting. We have predictive algorithms for the stock market. We demand 10-year career paths. We have endless meteorological models, and we spend billions on data analytics to remove any margin of uncertainty.
We want to know what happens tomorrow.
Yes. We are a society addicted to fortune-telling, even if we wrap it in sanitized corporate terminology. Let me ask you, listening to this right now, are your 5-year plans actually acts of presumption? Are you building a tower of control to avoid trusting God with tomorrow?
That is the direct conviction of the text. Responsible planning is certainly biblical. Proverbs commends the ant for storing food in the summer.
Right, it's not anti-planning.
But there is a razor-thin line between prudent preparation and proud certainty. When our plans mutate into demands, when we say, this is what my life will look like in 3 years, we have crossed into presumption.
We have forgotten that we are a vapor, and God's hiddenness forces us back into a posture of dependent trust. But honestly, that faith is most severely tested when the rules of fairness seem to completely and utterly break down.
When things don't add up.
Which brings us to the baffling, offensive observation Solomon makes in verse 15. He writes, "In my vain life I have seen everything. There is a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man who prolongs his life in his evil doing."
This verse is an absolute hammer to any remaining illusions of karmic moral arithmetic.
It smashes it.
It does. The prosperity gospel in the religious sphere and the concept of karma in the secular sphere both demand a clean, predictable transaction. Good people must get good outcomes, and bad people must get bad outcomes.
Which is the only way the universe feels safe.
Solomon looks around the world and forces the reader to confront the terrifying reality that under the sun, this equation frequently and spectacularly fails.
It is the ultimate anomaly. Think about the visceral modern examples we see all the time. We all know of the corrupt, ruthless dictator or the greedy corporate executive who knowingly poisons a town's water supply, who lives to be 90 years old.
Never spends a day in jail.
Right. They die peacefully in their sleep, surrounded by extreme luxury, facing zero earthly consequences for their actions.
And then you see the exact opposite.
You see the devoted, self-sacrificing mother of 3, or the faithful young pastor who spends his life serving the poor, who gets a terminal cancer diagnosis and dies tragically young. It makes absolutely no sense to our internal scales of justice.
It is deeply offensive to our innate sense of justice. It destabilizes our simplistic Sunday school view of how God should govern the world.
It really rattles you.
Notice that Solomon places this raw observation right after the command to consider God's providence. He does this because these are the exact moments when our faith is tempted to collapse into despair.
When the righteous perishes and the wicked prosper, our theology of providence is put through the fire. It is like reading a brilliant mystery novel. You are following the clues, you know who the killer is, you are waiting for the detective to burst into the room and arrest them, and then you turn the page and realize the final chapter has been completely torn out of the book.
You are just left hanging.
You have all the setup, but the justice has not happened. You are just left staring at a jagged edge of paper. How is a person supposed to look at that glaring, massive injustice, a wicked man living a long, happy life while a righteous man is destroyed, and avoid descending into pure, bitter cynicism?
Well, if this life under the sun is all there is, if the earthly temporal horizon is the absolute limit of reality, then cynicism is the only logical, rational response to verse 15.
So you should be a cynic.
Despair would be entirely justified. You should be a cynic if this world is the final word. But we are not constrained to the sun. We have to look beyond it.
I have to zoom out.
We have to look to the ultimate act of divine providence to make sense of this massive anomaly.
And this is where the theology of Ecclesiastes intersects with the New Testament in a breathtaking way. Because Jesus Christ is the true, ultimate righteous man who perished in his righteousness.
The crucifixion of Christ is the most bent, the most unjust, the most crooked event in all of human history.
There is nothing more unjust.
You have the sinless, spotless Son of God, who only ever did the will of the Father, who healed the sick and raised the dead, and he is falsely accused, mocked, brutally tortured, and murdered by wicked men.
The Pharisees and the Romans.
Right, who seemingly prolonged their own power and secured their own political stability in the process. When they rolled the stone over the tomb, the Pharisees went home thinking they had won.
They thought the wicked had prospered and the righteous had perished.
Under the sun, looking at it strictly horizontally, it looked like a total failure of divine justice. It looked like the universe was entirely out of control.
But we look at Acts chapter 4, where the early church is praying, and they declare that Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel, did whatever God's hand and God's plan had predestined to take place.
The cross was not an accident.
The cross was the ultimate iwa, the ultimate bent thing.
Yes, the cross was the ultimate day of adversity, authored by the Father's sovereign decree from before the foundation of the world to crush the Son for the salvation of his people.
Wait, so God authored the sin?
No, God was not the author of the sin committed by the Romans or the malice of the Jewish leaders, but he sovereignly ordained the saving outcome through their wicked actions. Through the most crooked tragedy imaginable, God accomplished the straightest, most glorious victory in the cosmos.
Let's talk about Christ's psychological and spiritual response to that adversity, because it models everything we have been discussing regarding yielding to providence.
Look at him in the garden.
Yes, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he faces the terrifying, crushing reality of the cup of divine wrath. The psychological pressure is so immense, he sweats drops of blood. He asks if there is any other way.
But what does he say at the end?
His final prayer is the perfect submission. Not my will, but yours be done. He yields completely to the Father's bending of his path.
Because Christ perfectly submitted and because he bore the full weight of divine penal wrath on the cross, the believer's relationship to suffering fundamentally and eternally changes. This is vital to grasp.
Unpack that. How does it change our suffering?
For the Christian, bad days are no longer expressions of divine condemnation. God is not punishing you in your adversity. That punishment already fell entirely on Christ.
So what is the adversity then?
Therefore, your suffering is now categorized as fatherly discipline. As Hebrews 12 lays out, the Lord disciplines the one he loves. The adversity is a refinement process, a tool to detach you from the idols of this world and conform you to the image of the Son.
That is a staggering paradox. Through the most crooked tragedy in history, the brutal execution of the Son of God, God actually straightened our depraved, crooked souls.
He took the crooked and made it straight.
I want you, listening right now, to consider how looking at Calvary completely reframes your own personal suffering.
It changes everything.
If God can take the darkest, most unjust murder in history and use it to bring about the salvation of the world, cannot use math. He used your medical diagnosis, your sudden financial loss, or your deeply broken relationship to accomplish his good, sovereign purposes.
He absolutely can.
The cross proves God's goodness, even when your current circumstances look entirely bleak.
It provides the ultimate theological anchor for the soul. Looking at Christ does not erase the mystery of providence. We still do not know why the car accident happened on a Tuesday or why the cancer returned.
We don't get the answers to the specific why.
But the cross definitively proves the mercy and the love of the God who governs those events. You can trust the Father's heart even when you cannot trace the Father's hand.
Okay, we have established a massive theological framework here. We have looked at the absolute sovereignty of providence, the vapor of life under the sun, the intentional asymmetry of our good and bad days, and the ultimate resolution at the cross.
We have covered a lot of ground.
I want to steer this conversation into the practical, boots-on-the-ground applications. So if we were breathing this unpredictable vapor every day, how do we stop hyperventilating?
Good question.
If anxiety is arrogance, what does repentance look like on a Tuesday morning when the bank account is low and the kids are sick?
It begins with a daily, conscious repentance of the illusion of control. We must stop trying to be the providence in our own lives.
It is so hard to let go of that.
Anxiety often masquerades as diligence. We tell ourselves, I'm just being a responsible parent, or I'm just planning for retirement.
I'm just being careful.
Right. But at its root, obsessive worry is a refusal to be a creature. It is a demand to sit on the Creator's throne and manage the universe. Repentance means stepping down from that throne, opening your hands, and confessing out loud that you do not hold tomorrow.
And when tomorrow brings a day of prosperity, we have to learn how to receive it without turning it into a fortress.
Receive it with open hands.
When your marriage is thriving, when the sun is shining and life feels incredibly sweet, do not feel guilty, but do not let that joy fuel your pride. Do not think, look at this great life my own two hands have built.
Let the warmth of the prosperity fuel a fierce gratitude toward the giver.
Conversely, when the storm hits, we meet the adversity with contemplation, not distraction.
The modern instinct is to numb the pain. We binge watch television, we throw ourselves into our work, we buy things we don't need.
Anything to look away.
Right, all to avoid feeling the sharp edge of the crooked day. But the text says to consider. Bring your soul before God and ask the hard, piercing questions.
Like what?
Like, what idols are being exposed in my panic right now? Where have I placed my hope other than Christ? What obedience remains my duty today, even while I sit in the dark?
That requires rejecting the prosperity gospel completely. And I don't just mean the obvious televised versions of it where someone in a shiny suit asks for money.
No, it goes much deeper than that.
I mean the subtle, sanitized, secular versions we all buy into. The belief that if I eat perfectly organic food, avoid all toxins, and go to the gym 5 days a week, I am guaranteed a life free of cancer.
That is just karma in workout gear.
Verse 15 absolutely destroys the idea that health and wealth are guaranteed marks of present faithfulness or biological superiority. It is a cruel, crushing theology that blames sufferers for their own pain. We have to discard it entirely.
Associated with that is the need to resist mysticism and the endless human chasing of private signs about the future. Because God says in verse 14 that we cannot find out what comes after us, we are constantly tempted to bypass his decree and seek out secret knowledge.
Oh, we want the cheat codes.
We want a private whisper, a special sign in the clouds, a fleece thrown on the ground to tell us exactly which job to take or who to marry. We want the certainty God has intentionally withheld.
So what do we do instead?
We must rely on the sufficiency of Scripture. We use sanctified judgment, we obey the clear moral commands of the Word, and we leave the hidden, secret things to the Lord.
This theology inevitably culminates in how we treat each other. What does a congregation look like if it is deeply shaped by the wisdom of Ecclesiastes? What does churchly compassion actually look like in a hospital room?
A congregation shaped by this reality is a community that does not demand that sufferers explain their pain before offering comfort.
They don't try to fix it right away.
They do not walk into a hospital room and say, well, God works all things for good, as a way to shut down the weeping. They weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice.
They sit in the tension.
They do not offer shallow theological cliches or bumper sticker slogans in the midst of a tragedy. They sit in the ashes with their friends, acknowledging the terrifying crookedness of the situation, while quietly holding on to the goodness of God on their behalf.
I think of a quote from Charles Spurgeon, who battled severe depression himself. He said, "Anxiety does not empty tomorrow of its sorrows, but only empties today of its strength."
That is a profound observation.
We drain our present capacity to love our spouses, to serve our church, and to do our jobs by agonizing over a hypothetical future we cannot control. But I want to push back on something here, because it is really easy for us to sit in a comfortable studio behind microphones and say, meet adversity with contemplation, don't complain.
Sure.
But when you read the Bible, King David flooded his bed with tears. The prophet Jeremiah lamented so hard an entire book is named after his weeping. Job cursed the day of his birth. Jesus himself was sorrowful unto death.
Yes, there is a lot of weeping in Scripture.
How do we distinguish between a faithful biblical lament and the sin of murmuring against God?
That is a phenomenal and necessary distinction. Bringing real, raw, bleeding pain to a real God is an act of dependent faith. Lament is looking directly at God and saying, this hurts terribly, I do not understand what you are doing, the darkness is my closest friend, please help me.
You see this all throughout the Psalms.
Murmuring, on the other hand, which we see the Israelites doing in the wilderness, is an accusation against God's character.
It's pointing the finger.
Right. Murmuring says, you brought us out here to kill us. You are cruel. You are unfair. You have wronged me. Lament clings to the relationship even in the dark. Murmuring tries to sever the relationship and put God on trial. God invites our tears. He rejects our accusations.
So the posture of the heart is what separates the two. We can cry out, we can grieve the bent things, we can acknowledge the pain of the vapor, but a faithful lament always eventually returns to, yet I will trust you.
Yes.
We have covered massive theological ground today. To summarize the core message for you listening, your life is a vapor. It is fleeting, it is fundamentally ungraspable, and it will frequently baffle you.
It will definitely baffle you.
But that vapor is held securely in the sovereign, calloused hand of a fiercely good Father. Do not waste your breath trying to seize the steering wheel from the Creator. It is an exhausting, impossible, and in the end, idol-worshipping task.
Instead, enjoy the sweet days with immense, unbridled gratitude. Let the warmth of the sun and the joy of prosperity point you directly to the giver. And in the bitter days, bow your head.
Embrace the discipline.
Endure the chastening, lean into the fatherly discipline, and wait with eager expectation for the coming King who will straighten all things in the final consummation. The crookedness of this current age is temporary. The justice and peace of God are eternal.
I want to leave you with a final lingering thought, a question to mull over as you go back to your day, your work, and your family.
It has been a deep session today.
If you truly accepted the reality that you cannot find out what happens tomorrow, and you completely radically trusted the one who holds it. How would that alter the way you treat the people sitting in front of you today?
That changes everything.
Does the absolute hiddenness of the future actually act as a divine gift, forcing you to finally drop your blueprints, look up from your predictive algorithms, and be completely present in the exact fleeting moment God has given you right now?